Welcome to the show. I'm Antisocial. And this is the Antisocial Network.
I want to talk to her, but my face is up against the wall. Yeah, I think she wants to talk to me, but I'm antisociable. Yeah.
This week, I'm discussing Sha'Carri Richardson being left off the USATF roster and how the Olympics hate black women. Thanks for tuning in! There is so much I wanted to write about for this week's episode that it all started to blur together. First, I wanted to talk about black creators on TikTok striking and refusing to make any new dance videos, and that evolved into TikTok being racist in general. Then, with Bill Cosby claiming his release was a win for the black community, even though his victims were mostly black women, and Britney Spears simultaneously making headlines again for being unable to make a single decision in her own life, including removing her IUD, I was starting to lean towards women's rights and how America hates women. Then, the Olympics slapped a ban on Sha'Carri Richardson for a little weed, and I fully lost it. I was railing on Instagram, wondering why women weren't picketing in the streets. Where were all the pussy hat women and the hashtag MeToo women and Women's March liberals of 2016? Where was the outrage? When I posed this question online, I got a lot of support, but I also got some comments from women saying things like, "We already do everything else," and "We're too emotionally exhausted from trauma," etc. And while I get the sentiment and I understand not everyone is an activist, I still don't understand where the momentum went. If Trump has to grab another pussy to piss women off into action, then I volunteer as tribute. I felt like I got the news of Cosby's release, Britney's ongoing conservatorship, and Sha'Carri's Olympic ban all at the same time. I was awash with anger, and it felt like a tipping point. I was ready to light some shit on fire. But aside from placing blame on other women for not showing up, I thought to myself that I've attended countless action in my life in support of communities that I am not a part of. Gay pride, BLM, fuck ICE. Where were the allies? Where were the men? In addition to Sha'Carri's 30-day suspension, the Olympics has a bad track record for supporting black athletes, particularly black women. Immediately after the news about Sha'Carri's positive THC test, people were attacking her character online and comparing her to FloJo. Some were claiming FloJo had died early from a life of prolonged drug use, which was completely false, and were making the inference that Sha'Carri was destined for the same fate. The comparison to FloJo isn't random. Florence Griffith Joyner, or FloJo, was an American track and field athlete who is known for being the fastest woman of all time. She qualified for the Olympic team in 1980 at 21 years old, first competed in the Olympics in 1984, winning a silver medal, and set a world record at the 1988 Olympic trials before going on to win 3 gold medals in the '88 Olympics. She was known for her athleticism as well as her style, sporting long nails, much like Sha'Carri is known for today. FloJo died in her sleep in 1998 at 38 years old, brought on by an epileptic seizure. Her autopsy showed no signs of prolonged drug use. Sha'Carri Richardson isn't just a black runner with an eclectic style, she's also the fastest. On June 19th, 21-year-old Richardson took first place at the Olympic trials in Eugene, Oregon, running the 100-meter dash in 10.86 seconds. For reference, the men's record was set by Usain Bolt in 2009, clocking in at 9.58 seconds, and the women's record remains FloJo's 10.49, set in 1988 and has been unbroken for the past 33 years. The fact that I'm talking about Sha'Carri at all is proof she's an icon. I don't give a fuck about sports or the Olympic trials. I never have. But, as she told the world after breaking records in Oregon last month, she's that girl, and you can't just not pay attention to her. An article by MissMagazine.com stated, "When Richardson's entire aesthetic might be considered black, it's a win for us to see her at the top of the Olympic team." Sha'Carri's not just black, she's unapologetically black. Queer, with several visible tattoos, long orange hair, and nails to match, Sha'Carri showed the world she's the fastest, and that's all that matters. I hate talking about how women look because it's just not something we do for men when talking about their accomplishments. Whether Sha'Carri has hair and nails or not shouldn't fucking matter. But the fact is, it does. She's a refreshing dose of female empowerment and the role model we all need. Seeing a powerful, strong, feminine athlete who is also a black woman is an important image for girls to see, and it's hard not to think her punishment for testing positive for marijuana has way more to do with that than anything else. Acting like one positive marijuana test is life and career ruining is bullshit war on drugs Reagan-era propaganda, especially now as marijuana becomes legalized across the country. It is currently legal, partially legal, or decriminalized in 34 states, more than half the nation. The reality is that if weed ruins Sha'Carri's running career, it will have absolutely nothing to do with marijuana being a harmful substance and everything to do with Sha'Carri being a black woman. We already know weed isn't a performance-enhancing substance. The only place weed is going to help you run to is your fridge. Furthermore, Sha'Carri was issued a 30-day suspension, which will end right before the Tokyo Games. Technically, she could have still ran. There was hope until July 6th, when the USA track and field roster was released and Sha'Carri's name was not on it. Officials made statements expressing their supposed sympathy for Sha'Carri, but insist that the marijuana policy is an international one, and they cannot make an exception for one athlete. Plus, they say it would be unfair to all the other Olympic hopefuls who followed the rules and did not test positive. Yeah, but Sha'Carri is the fastest. Period. Are we trying to win the Olympics? Is that not the sole purpose of going? When we roster athletes for the Olympic team, are we choosing the best or are we going off fairness? This isn't high school sports. Everyone doesn't get a turn. Sha'Carri was the fastest at the Olympic trials in Oregon, and that's with the THC in her system. Yet her win was rendered null following discovery of her positive results, as if the weed is what helped her run fast. If she stays clean during her suspension and runs in Tokyo, imagine how much faster she'll be. Yes, the doping laws for the Olympics are international standards, but that's a false argument when she was slapped with a 30-day suspension that could have sufficed and still allowed her to run. Additionally, her mother had just died. And oh, did I mention? She's the fastest! The Olympic officials defending this decision have said that if they make an exception now, it will set a bad precedent, and they will have to change them going forward. No? Says who? Sha'Carri is the fastest. An exception should be made because she's the fucking fastest. Period. Let Sha'Carri run. Before we continue, let's hop to break. Brought to you by artisan baristas kidnapped from the southernmost regions of Seattle and transported to your local Amazon hub locker. One coffee bean is all you need is the answer to all your sustainability, fair trade, expensive coffee habit, why is your spouse leaving you, you probably have codependency issues, problems. One coffee bean is all you need is not a coffee system. There are no wasteful cups to continuously buy. There's no coffee shop lines you have to deal with. Just one single bean. First, just pop that little bad boy right in your kisser. Masticate thoroughly, then relocate bean bits to your freedom press. Use boiling water and press as usual. When finished, relocate damp bean bits to a moist paper towel. Repeat process until your next bean arrives in 364 days. It's that easy! One coffee bean is all you need. Also makes a great Mother's Day present or Flag Day gift for your boss. Don't forget your gynecologist at Labor Day. Are you tired of at-home tattoo treatments that leave your spouse disappointed and your skin infected? Do you want the professional look of your local tattoo artist, but their shop is out of range of your ankle monitor? If you've got that itch to get some new ink but can't afford the high prices of qualified artists every paycheck, then you need Madison Bleed. Started by a mom and named after her daughter's horrible tattoo, you too can use Madison Bleed to fix your fuck-ups at home. Not just for cover-ups, Madison Bleed is perfect for the novice tattooist and comes with a tracing guide for sparrows, semicolons, and foreign language symbols. Start designing your quality at-home tattoos today with Madison Bleed. And diving right back in. The Sha'Carri saga comes at a time when the Olympics is facing other scrutiny for being anti-black. The International Olympic Committee has a policy of barring any political statements. It's called Rule 50 of the Olympic Charter, and the International Olympic Committee has defended it, stating it is intended to protect the neutrality of sport in the Olympic Games. This isn't a new rule. U.S. track athletes Tommy Smith and John Carlos were ousted from the 1968 Games after raising black-gloved fists in black power salutes on the podium. But it's more than 50 years later, and in the wake of civil rights uprisings around the world, the law has come under renewed criticism. This rule prevents any athletes from wearing Black Lives Matter clothing, kneeling, or raising a fist. The United States has permitted Team USA athletes to don BLM attire, raise a fist, and kneel at qualifying Olympic trials, but they will be subjected to international rules and fines if they do any of these things when they get to Tokyo. In the current climate we are in, enforcing Rule 50 to include acts of protest by black athletes amounts to racism and complicity. There is no such thing as neutrality when it comes to racism, and denying black athletes the right to use their platform to express that is merely proof there's something to protest. Additionally, advocating for civil rights doesn't have to be a political statement. By ignoring the lived experience of black athletes and reinforcing the idea that fighting for equality is a political talking point that is only acceptable and/or palatable in certain spaces, we are only perpetuating systems of oppression. Black athletes can't turn off being black when they compete. They do not transcend their black experience by being optimal athletes. And trying to police their behavior is not maintaining a professional environment or the neutrality of sports or whatever, but instead upholding the racist status quo. If you think the Olympic ban on political speech is justified and that perhaps the Sha'Carri suspension resulting in her not making the USATF roster is an isolated incident, I suggest you look closer. As the world's top athletes head into the Tokyo Olympics, a wave of penalizations and criticism are shedding light onto how black women in sports are treated, says a CNN article on the subject. The article identifies several incidents of punitive treatment towards black women athletes in recent months. 32-year-old American hammer thrower Gwen Berry has faced backlash for turning away from the flag during the qualifying trials in Oregon last month, where she placed third and made the Olympic team. She's come under fire for this decision, and conservative politicians have called for her to be removed, although Berry claims that she was set up. Despite a regular schedule of the American anthem being played at a specific time each day, the song came as a surprise to Berry, who then chose to turn away from the flag. Later, she explained to interviewers, "I never said that I hated the country. All I said was I respect my people enough to not stand or acknowledge something that disrespects them. I love my people, point blank, period." Yet again, a showing of solidarity by a black athlete is labeled as combative, unpatriotic, and politically motivated. Kaepernick took a knee in late August of 2016, nearly 5 years ago, and lost his football career forever because of it. Protesters throughout 2020 were vilified and demonized in the media for damaging property when an overwhelming majority of BLM action was peaceful. Society doesn't like it when black people assert their rights, regardless of how respectfully or peacefully it's carried out. Namibian sprinters Christine Momoba and Beatrice Messalingi were recently barred from competing in a race in the Olympics due to naturally occurring levels of testosterone in their systems, something completely beyond their control. Shortly after Alice Deering became the first black woman in Great Britain to qualify for the open water marathon, the International Swimming Federation made a decision refusing to permit the use of swim caps specially designed for natural black hair. As sociology professor Lori L. Martin explained to CNN, policies and procedures associated with sporting events are often seen as race neutral. However, these incidents show how sports policies don't necessarily take into account athletes of color and the dehumanization that black women and girls experience. Despite being touted as race neutral, often policies can differently impact athletes depending on their race or gender, like for instance in the case of swim caps for black hair or policies that unfairly discriminate against women with higher levels of testosterone than deemed acceptable. Caster Semenya, a 30-year-old South African woman, was also barred from running in any race between 400 meters and 1 mile. In fact, in 2018, World Athletics ruled that any women, and only women, who tested with naturally high levels of testosterone would have to take medication to reduce their numbers before being eligible to compete in any middle-distance races. Semenya is an 800-meter champion, but refuses to take any drugs to reduce her hormone levels. Semenya is hyperandrogynous and plans to challenge the decision in the European Court of Human Rights. Those types of policies show that some people's ideas about womanhood continue excluding groups of people and the need for more black individuals in sports leadership, said one article on the subject. Lori L. Martin, the sociologist who spoke to CNN, said of these decisions, "We tend to center whiteness. We don't necessarily think about how the rules impact other groups because we're thinking about whiteness and white people being the norm." In addition, the ban on swimming caps for black hair doesn't seem so innocuous when you take into account the history of swimming and racial discrimination in America. In the CNN article titled "How Black Women Athletes Are Still Being Scrutinized Ahead of the Olympics Despite Their Successes," author Nicole Chavez points out that historically, swimming and swimming pools have been connected to racial disparity in this country. 64% of black children do not learn how to swim, as compared to 40% of white children. This statistic is surely a holdover of segregation, redlining, and gatekeeping of what has largely been considered a white sport. Proponents for more racial diversity in competitive swimming have argued for easier access to pools in lower-income areas, as well as more affordable swimming lessons. Of the 26 women on the U.S. Olympic swim team, only 2 are black, including Simone Manuel, the first black female swimmer to earn an individual gold medal. It's clear that there are systems and rules in place within the Olympics that disproportionately discriminate against black athletes, and specifically black women. We live in a time where fascist pockets are growing with frightening rapidity, while conservative lawmakers argue that critical race theory is destructive to our democracy and encourage citizens to snitch on each other over abortions and radical ideologies. Perpetuating and upholding decades-old policies that actively harm and exclude anyone who is not white should be a notion of the past, especially in something internationally regulated like the Olympics. There's no excuse for these transphobic, racist, archaic rules other than white supremacy. I won't be watching the Olympics, but I won't pretend like that's some big sacrifice since I never watch them anyway. But I'm hopeful that anyone who hears this might think twice about the blind support they're giving to an organization that actively harms black women by continuously changing rules and moving goalposts so that they cannot succeed. I support all the black athletes that are going to Tokyo, but I'll hear about it online or in news articles after the fact. Fuck the Olympics. That's my show for this week. I'm Antisocial, and this is the Antisocial Network. If you want even more access to me, Antisocial, follow me on Instagram at the Antisocial Network. To support my content creation dreams and to receive 2 bonus episodes a month, subscribe to my Patreon for only $5 at patreon.com/theantisocialnetwork. And for a limited time, new patrons will receive Antisocial Network stickers and a top-secret handmade zine made by me, Antisocial. To send me voice memos or to submit your own funny fake ad that I might use in my podcast, download the Anchor app and find my show there. As always, new episodes are available in the free feed every week. See you next Wednesday. Later!
I think I'm a nice guy, but I'm antisociable, yeah.